Hello, everyone. I'd like to welcome everybody to this update webinar with Coro Mining. My name is Jacob Willoughby. I'm a Vice President of Research here at Red Cloud Securities. Joining me here in our shooting room is Luis Albano Tondo, President and CEO of Coro, and Sergio Rivera, VP of Exploration of Coro Mining. So we'll begin today's webinar with a presentation from Luis that will provide an overview of the company and update us on the plans for the company's Marimaca deposit in northern Chile. After that, we can take questions from participants online. Before we begin, we must cover everybody's favorite sections, the disclosures. So I'll start with that now. For Coro Mining, there may be some forward-looking statements made during this presentation, and I would direct listeners to the cautionary note on page 2 of the company's corporate presentation that is located on their website. For Red Cloud Securities, please see the full disclaimer and disclosures on our website. And I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only, should not be considered a solicitation to purchase or sell securities or a recommendation to buy or sell securities. Also, we note that this webinar does not take into account the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigations and seek their own professional advice before investment. Red Cloud specific disclosures related to Coro Mining are the following. In the last 12 months, Red Cloud Securities has been retained under a service or advisory agreement by the subject issuer. A member of Red Cloud Securities has visited material operations of the subject issuer, and Red Cloud Securities or a member of the Red Cloud Securities team or household has a long position in the shares and or options of the subject issuer. Finally, with that said, I'd like to have Luis Tondo, who will now tell us about Coro Mining.
Thank you. If you can just go back to the very first slide, please. Okay, so I'm here. It's a pleasure to be here to start talking about our flagship Marimaca project. Just to remind, Coro is a junior mining company that is listed in the TSX. We are focused on discovering copper deposits in Chile. And that's when we came across some years ago with our Marimaca project. And now I'm here to give an update in terms of what we are in terms of, the resource that we've got in our hands and what we're planning to do in terms of developing it. We believe Marimaca to be one of the best copper oxide discoveries in the last 10 years in Chile. And it's located in an ideal position to be developed. So this photo, the initial photo that you can see here, was taken at the sunset in the Pacific Ocean, overlooking the Mejillones Bay. And what that photo managed to do was to capture the essence of the project, the essence of Marimaca. If you look closer to the shore of the Bay of Mejillones, you will be able to see the silhouette of all the industrial installations that are present in the area, which means that, first of all, you are on top of the deposit with a maximum altitude of 1,000 meters, which for Chile is not high. You can have other projects high in the Andes over 4,000 meters. That's not the case of Marimaca. And you can touch the mineral resource with your bare hands because it's outcropping. Very good quality. We are going to talk about that in detail as we go forward in the presentation. And most importantly, this location has all the infrastructure that we need to develop a mining operation from that high quality resource. And that's what this photo is capturing and is showing. Next one, please. Next. So why investors should consider our company Coro, why they should consider investing in a project like Marimaca. We put that into this slide. That's the 3 pillars that are going to be building our growth profile. One, I just mentioned about the location of this project. which is surrounded by the infrastructure that we need. And we'll see that graphically in the next slide. Basically, sorry, can you just go back, please? So this is the first let's say, pillar that will allow this project to be developed. The fact that we already have all this, the infrastructure that we'll need, what that does for us is to reduce the financing and operating risk to develop the mine operation for the future. The second pillar is the resource, and we just put forward in the last Monday our up-to-date resource. There was a substantial increase in the contained copper. The last resource that we had was published last year in 2018. We had something like 320,000 tons of contained copper. We basically doubled that resource now with the last exploration campaign. And that's only the beginning. We believe that there is still a vast exploration potential in that district scale and in and around Marimaca. We'll talk about that, especially looking for more oxide deposit, more oxide resource, and also down deep for sulfides. So in terms of the total area that Coro owns or controls, we are talking about a land position of over 300 square kilometers, where with Marimaca we just explored something like 20 square kilometers, which means that we explore less than 10% from our land position, and therefore that's why we believe that there is much more to go, and that's the upside potential that I'll be talking about as well. So if you take the first pillar, location, superb location, plus the new resource base that we have, plus the exploration potential that we still have, this all lends to itself for a development path. And in that regard, what the company is looking for is to develop some engineering studies that will show us the best approach to develop the project. And one of the preferred options would be to go for a low capex intensive starter operation. In that sense, there are a number of features on the resource that we already got, which will facilitate this development. First of all, the resource itself lends to itself for a single pit. It's continuous enough. There is a low strip ratio. That means that the ore starts from surface. The strip ratio will be between 1.1 to 1 strip ratio. And on top of that, as we were developing our exploration campaign, we were able to identify at least 5 near-surface high-grade zones. What those grade zones will do for us is we can start some mining with the initial pit, bringing very good grade ore first up front in the mine plan, which will enhance the economics of this project. And finally, Coro in 2017 acquired an SX electrowinning plant, the Ivan plant, which is located only 22 kilometers to the south of the mine, or the south of the deposit, Marimaca. And that plant is going to allow us to start this low-scale operation with minimum capex intensity, therefore being the option that we'll take going forward. Next one, please. Graphically talking about the excellent location infrastructure, one can see that Marimaca is located in that red rectangle in the center of this picture. So if one draws a circle around Marimaca, that circle having something like 25 kilometers of radius, basically you've got everything that is needed for developing the project. First of all, what we need people, and we are very close to the Mejillones town and also to Antofagasta. Antofagasta is known as the copper capital in Chile, so we will be able to tap from those resources. We'll be able to use people from these two centers and also the services, which means that in terms of the project build, we won't need a camp. That translates again in low capex intensity for implementing the project, and therefore it's one of the benefits of being that location. The second thing that we need for a heap leaching project to operate is water. Marimaca is in the coastal belt, and although being very close to the coast, we are already in the Atacama Desert, the driest desert in the world. So water in Chile can be more scarce than copper, but it's not the case for Marimaca, because as we are close to the coast, only 25 kilometers, we can put a pipeline and we can bring seawater, which can be used to leach the ore, and that's another benefit as you see. The next thing that you need is power. It happens that the power grid of Chile that runs from north to south passes through only 10 kilometers from the property. So it's going to be easy also to tap off from the power grid and bring power for the project. And finally, one of the most important consumables that you need for a heap leach operation is sulfuric acid. It happens that Chile nowadays imports something like 2 million tons of acid per year, and the majority of that acid comes through the port of Mejillones, which again is only 25 kilometers from the property. So the location that we have in all the infrastructure that where is situated Marimaca makes it a project that is almost begging to be developed. With all the infrastructure that we have, we believe that it's going to be very low capex intensive, very low risk operationally and financially. And we'll explain what we think in terms of how we should be developing it going forward. Next slide, please. Let's talk about a little bit further in detail with the resource that we just identified. That was done, as I said, was published last Monday. So this picture shows a visual sense for the audience how we managed in a very short period of time, which was like 20 months, to double the amount of resource that we have today in the property. On the top cross section, that was the block model that we had in terms of the resource that we had identified and published in April 2018. And that represented more or less in terms of dimension, a strike length of around 450 meters long. And when you compare to the bottom picture, the bottom cross section, which is something that we just came up with, which was released now in November 2019, one can see the enlargement of the resource, which, as I said in the beginning, represented doubling the amount of contained copper from 2018 to 2019. So in 2018, we have something like 320,000 tons of contained copper, and now we've got almost 640,000 tons. And the strike length that the final block model is representing here in this picture went from 450 meters, 750 meters long to 1,500 meters long, which again shows the amount of increase that we managed to get in this short period of time. Another feature that is important to realize on this picture is that the ore the resource, the good grades are starting from surface, which again translates in a single pit that is going to be operated with a very low strip ratio. Next picture, please. Next slide. This is another cross-section highlighting a little bit further the grades on the deposit. The scale that you can see in the left side shows the grading. So the red and the pinkish colors being higher grade, 0.6, 0.8, up to 1%. And what can be noticed in this cross-section is that there is a blanket of high grade, which represent exactly the high-grade zones near the surface that we were able to identify as we move forward doing our exploration campaign. And in particularly, right in the center of the picture, one of the high-grade nucleus can be seen, and that nucleus starts from surface. Obviously, when you run your mine sequence, the initial pit will be located more or less in that region, which will translate in bringing very good grade up front in your mine plan, and therefore enhancing the economics of the project. Next, please. That's another view showing also the high grade, this time as a plan view, and also can be seen that the distribution of high grades goes along the strike, and right in the center is where we are going to be doing the starting pit and getting the good grades up front in the mine plan, therefore enhancing the economics of the project. Next, please. As a summary, those are the numbers that are shown in terms of the resource that were just published. So that was done by containing the economical resource into a pit. In that case, using a set of economical parameters. First of all, we use a copper price of $3 per pound, a bit different from what we done last year, which was 3.5. So we are being a bit more conservative now, but there is a reason for doing that, and I'll explain when we got to the development work, engineering work. So when we apply these economic parameters, the cutoff that it translates to is highlighted in the table, which is around 0.22% total copper. With that amount of cutoff grade, we identify something like 70.1 million tons of 0.6% total copper of measured indicated resource, plus 43 million tons at a grade of 0.52% total copper of inferred resource. So together combined, that's what we are going to have as a contained copper, something like 640,000 tons, roughly. And another thing that's important to realize on this table, if you look at the two rows below the cutoff grade, like the row of 0.18% total copper and the row of 0.1% total copper, those represents a portion of the resource that are inside the pit, and also that we consider can be calculated as marginal cutoffs. And in that case, one refers to heap leach material, marginal heap leach material that will be processed as heap leach. And the other one, the lower bottom, is going to be material that can be marginally economic processed as dump leach. So overall, in the table, one can come to the conclusion that the total resource that's going to be mineable in that case would be around 80 million tons at measure indicated at 0.54 and 50 million tons at 0.47 as inferred. And finally, on this table also, we highlighted the first row, which is the high grade at a 0.5% cutoff. One can see that we've got something like 35 million tons at a grade over 8%, 0.8%, 85% total copper, and other inferred 17 million tons at 0.8%. So basically what that is saying that over 50 million tons of the resource that are shown in this table is considered como high grade, is part of the high grade zones that we just shown in the previous slides, which again will enhance the economics of the project. But this is just the beginning. We believe this is just the start of how we are going to be building the project, because we have lots more to find, and that can be seen in the next slide. As I mentioned in the beginning, Coro controls something like 200 square kilometers in the district of Marimaca, where only 20 square kilometers were actually explored and now contain the resource that we just talked about. So the idea here on the left side is to show why we think there is more potential to come. There are some tools that we successfully utilize to find the current resource. One is a geochemical work. That's what is shown in the left side, in the picture on the left side. So the footprint of geochemical work in that picture shows all the sampling that was done and that returned copper grades over 500 ppm, which allow us to actually map out and start and drill out the deposit in the center area of Marimaca. So the other aspect that was identified by the geological work was what we call the alteration front, which is in this case indicated by the outline that we call the red cap outline. And what we learned over the months of doing the work is that the mineralization in Marimaca follows the strike along this red cap alteration front. And so we believe that further to the north of the central area of Marimaca and further to the south, which is also corroborated by the geochemical work that was done, we can find more satellite deposits, satellite oxide deposits along the strike. And another thing that allowed us to understand was by looking at the geological model that was concluded recently, in having into account that one of the drills, some of the drill holes that were performed at the late stage, they started intercepting primary zones of sulfide. And by primary sulfide, I'm referring to chalcopyrite with some good grades. Was the existing of these sulfide bodies, which now needs more definition so that we can properly identify how much and what's the extension that we're going to get from these sulfides. And what it allows us to understand, first of all, is that the sulfide have a tendency and a potential to occur underneath this red cap alteration layer. And that's where we are going to be targeting our efforts and our work going forward. But that was only the Marimaca area to the left side. Now, if you compare this picture and start looking at the right side of this picture, so the white rectangle that is shown in the red side and the red hand side is exactly what was in the left side. And one can see that this red cap outline actually can be traced further to the north and further to the south of the Marimaca area. And we are talking about now at some kilometers of scale. So while the first picture to the left was something like 4 by 5 kilometers, the right one now is talking about 15 by 20 kilometers. So it's a much larger area. It's more like a district scale. And we believe that as we understand the same features of the geological features that allow us to find the Marimaca deposit, that can be applied also to the district scale, going further to the region where we have, for instance, our Ivan plant. And in there, we can also target for finding more oxide deposits along strike, and underneath the red cap, finding also the sulfide exploration potential. So that's why we are saying that we are very happy with the resource already have in Marimaca, but there are much more to come in terms of potential for the future. And what we are planning to do in that regard, in the beginning of next year, we are going to be doing some more surface work, specifically more geochemical campaigns to try to identify more targets for oxides. And we are going to be running a geophysics campaign to try to target exactly the sulfide potential, try to see if we can get some signature that will show what's the best locations for us to start doing some deeper drill holes and try to define better this sulfide exploration that we just recognize in the northern part of Marimaca. Next one. So just for recap, this, let's say, the summary of our pit constrained resource at a cutoff of 0.22% total copper. So measure indicator, we got something like 420,000 tons of copper. And as inferred, we have 225,000 tons of copper, all with a low strip ratio of 1.11 to 1. What that could allow us to do in terms of developing a project, if one consider that the recoveries that we can expect for this heap leach operation will be anywhere between 70 to 76%, and we apply that sort of recoveries in the total amount of contained copper that I just showed in the table, we believe that that can generate a mine plan of producing between 40,000 to 50,000 tons of cathodes per year for at least 10 years. And that's where we're going to be based our engineering studies going forward. So for that, in that regard, we appointed recently the engineering company Wood, and they are going to be developing two or determining two macro scenarios for us, which I'm going to explain in the next slides. One is to come up with a full-scale conventional project, which will be at a PEA level. And the second one will be to take a stage approach and developing a low-scale project so that we can minimize the financing risk and Coro as a junior company can develop. In that regard, one of the key assets that we have that will be used on this study is going to be the Ivan plant. The Ivan plant is an SX electrolytic plant that has got a capacity of 10,000 tons of cathode per year and was acquired by Coro in 2017 by $6.5 million. We ran a feasibility study last year on that plant, which returned very good economics. First of all, requiring a very low capex amount of 22.6 million, and that was primarily for refurbishing that plant. And with that capex, it returned economic parameters like $114 million of NPV at a 5% discount and a very large RRR, almost of 60%. That's because of the low capex intensity that we had. A plant like that, if you were to buy or to build brand new, would probably cost in the range of $70 million. So we believe that what the price that we paid last year at 6.5 was a very good deal. And now it will allow us to go into a development path, a very low risk in terms of financing. We believe that we can finance that 100% with debt. So therefore, avoiding to raise equity for this and coming up with minimum dilution for shareholders. So as I mentioned, the idea now is to refresh this feasibility, have in mind that we now have a new resource base, which will extend the mine life. The mine life last year was calculated to last something like 15 to 16 years. Now with the extra resource that we are adding to our bases, this is going to be increased, and the idea is to refresh that, and that will be one of the options that Coro has got as a development path. So in conclusion, in the next slide, I just would like to remind you again what are the competitive advantage that we have as a company. First of all, a project that is very well located, surrounded by infrastructure, which will reduce our development, financing, operating risks. That summed up with the current resource base, which was a substantial increase from last year's. We doubled the amount of contained copper that we have, and we still think this is only the tip of the iceberg. There is much more further exploration upside to go for. The two things, location plus resort, will lead itself to development. And in terms of development, we want to come up with at least two scenarios. One is to get to the conventional full-scale project scenario, where we're going to have an NPV for this project if we were to develop as a full-scale immediately. But the most likely one for Coro will be a stage approach and low capacity scenario using our Ivan plant, which will allow us actually to execute this project being a small cap company and just with that, with minimum dilution to shareholders. So ultimately, what the investors that are hearing to us should think is in terms of value of the company. Coro used to be up to now assets as an pure exploration company, where we have valuation based on cents of dollars per pound of copper in the ground. This is going to be shifted now with the engineering studies that we plan to finish in the next months or so, to a company that will be assets based on an NPV value, which we believe that shifting from this explorer to developer company we are going to be re-rating in some, hopefully in some multiples from what we have today. Thank you very much for listening to this presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Luis. We'll give some time for people online to punch in some questions. In the meantime, I'd like to ask just a couple questions directly. I think it would be helpful if you could tell us about the potential water supply for the project. Because I think that's always one of the big questions in Chile, both for the plant and for the heap leach.
Okay, so when you think about the full-scale project case, that's going to be used utilizing seawater. And as I said, Marimaca is very close to the coast, only 25 kilometers. We have a number of options where we're going to capture that water. One would be capturing the water straight from the sea. That would require some permitting to go on, and installations of pumps, intake, pipelines. There is other ways that are going to be more ready access to do it. In the Mejillones Bay, for instance, there are a number of thermal plants. Those thermal plants utilize seawater to cool down their turbines, and that water becomes reject to them. And they actually cannot discard that water direct to the sea due to the temperature, higher temperature that comes out. So therefore, they made a business for them to actually sell that water for mining companies in the region. And we've been already in contact with some of the thermal plants, and they are very happy to supply, have long-term contracts and supply that water, and would be paying at $1 per cubic meter basis. So that's one opportunity. The other opportunity is that, of course, there are other aqueducts in the region that are already being built by other mining companies, bigger mining companies. And we know that at least one or two cases, there are some idle capacity that also we could have an approach and talk to them and maybe get some water out of these pipelines, already existing pipelines, which for us would be a plus, because then you don't need to actually permit your own installation. So that's regarding the full-scale project, the conventional project that will be probably related to have a new plant sitting close to the pit in Marimaca. Now, for our low-scale case stage approach, which is using the Ivan plant. The Ivan plant already has got all the infrastructure in place to bring the water. And in that case, what we're going to be doing is bringing desalinated water that is sold by the water company out of Antofagasta. They got all the infrastructure already in place, so it's just plug and play.
Okay. Question from online, probably a popular question now for people in Canada and the US, asking if you think Chile is still a safe place to invest, which I'm pretty sure you do, yeah. But I'll let you answer that.
Chile is the best jurisdiction to invest in mining operations in South America, and continues to be. What is happening in Chile, we believe to be a temporary situation. I think Chile is somewhat paying a bit due to their success in the last 20, 30 years to improve actually the living situation for people, and people got used to that. And nowadays they want to see the same improvement rate, which obviously is not possible all the time. I think the government is leading to that, and some response are going to be done in the medium long term, and people at the end will have to realize what is possible and what is not possible. Now, the reality in terms of the mining industry is that the mining industry has been very functional, has not been affected at all. The copper production is as expected. Otherwise, you would see some variation in the copper price, and you haven't seen that. So to me, that is an example that if the mining industry can work even in this situation, unsettling situation, that means that it's really a strong position as a country to keep developing their projects. We've been in contact with the authorities close to our projects as a good policy. And what we hear from them is that they are very keen to see projects like Marimaca develop in their region.
And I would add that we've been watching the situation as closely as we can here. Yeah. And I've not come across any cancellations of investment projects by major companies in Chile, either from companies inside Chile like Codelco or foreign mining companies. I still believe it's considered a top-tier country to invest in and to operate in.
Exactly. We've got the mining culture there. We got the expertise in country. And we're very lucky now to find such a deposit like Marimaca that I keep repeating that with all the benesses that he's got around it, it's a project that is begging to be developed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it really could hardly be situated any better. I mean, if you were closer to Mejillones, then it might be disruptive. So I think it's almost literally perfectly positioned.
You touch a very good point. Last year, when we finished our feasibility study, which we did for a fraction of the resource, we actually went and went for permitting the initial pit, and we managed to get that permit in 6 months. So the initial pit for Marimaca 1 to 23 is already permitted. And the plant, the Ivan plant, we bought already with its permits. Some of them are requiring some renewal now because of the time that was there. And we believe that by first quarter next year, we'll have a fully permitted project. Now, for running the permitting process last year, we obviously did all the baseline studies, which prove that the region in itself doesn't have any environmental constraints like endangered species or any problems with flora, fauna. And also in terms of the communities, we got a very good response. So really, we are well situated because we are close to the big centers to be able to, get people and service from that, but not that close that would disturb them.
Right. Another question from online asking, what sort of timeline do you think is realistic to get the project into production if you go with the starter stage smaller option?
Okay. Well, the idea is to run engineering studies over the course of next year. As I said, with these two scenarios that we are thinking about, the stage low capex scenario and as a stage approach and the conventional one. After that, we have to make a decision on going ahead and start refurbishing the plant. We believe that refurbishment can take anywhere between 6 to 8 months to go. So realistically, to start some production, low-scale production from the Ivan plant, we believe that is going to be early 2021.
Excellent. Maybe one last question that we have time for, another one from online. Your total resource between measured, indicated, and inferred now is about 110, 115 million tons at approximately 0.5, 0.6% copper. Someone online asking if you still think it's possible that you could grow the resource, this oxide resource, maybe even 200 million tons?
Well, we do believe that we can improve the resource base. Remember that half of that is still inferred, which means that the drilling space that was used was not enough to categorize that as measured indicated. So two things can happen. Once you start doing infill drilling there, you probably will end up converting most of the inferred into measured indicated, which was the case last year when we had also the same situation for Marimaca 1 to 23, and we were able to convert most of the inferred into measured indicated. And that came with an improvement in the grade just because of more definition that you have in the geology. So we believe that that's going to be possible. And yeah, maybe also in terms of adding more tons. But again, even if that doesn't happen exactly in the central area, I'd like to remind that we still have a huge exploration potential nearby around Marimaca, which is going to be, let's say that if this turns to be satellite deposits, that is okay, because we already got Marimaca, the central Marimaca area is a hub that then later any addition to any new satellite body will contribute for extending the mine life, and that's only the Marimaca area. And on top of that, we got at the district scale, then something like 200 square kilometers still to go for finding more Marimaca style mineralization. We believe that now we understand well the geological model of the area. So if anything, we are the ones that are better prepared to find more this kind of deposit in the coastal belt.
Do we have time for perhaps one more? Or okay, one good question here from online asking, do you own the land and do you have payments left to make on the property?
Yeah. We own a big chunk of the land. We actually own. The others we control, in the sense that we have option agreements, that we still have to do some payments of some installments. Some option agreements have 36 months, the others have 48. So overall, the important thing is that we control 100% of the area that we need and that we believe are prospective. And yeah, there are some payments that are going to be due for the next 1 year or so. And that's what we're doing.
Right. I believe you have a payment mid next year of 6 million, was it?
We have this year, we announced in September, that was for the Marimaca 1 to 23 claim, the very first one that we start developing our resource. Coro entered in an option agreement originally to own up to 75% of that land. And we are going to get to there, but as we are seeing the benefit of having all this resource, identifying the area, with the board, we decided to actually negotiate and buy out 100% of the property, which we managed to do by $12 million. That was a deal that was announced last September. From that $12 million, we have to pay $6 million now. And the other 6 is going to be due in 12 months, and the other 3 in 24 months, which are the ones that we need to continue to follow up.
Okay, that's a lot to take in. I very much would like to thank you for your presentation and answering questions and being here with us at Red Cloud. Obviously, we're big fans of the company. We're very excited about the future, and I think we'll sign off for now and update the market next chance we get. Thank you everyone for participating. Look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thank you very much.